I had been in worse places before, but none of them had politely asked for my blood while serving something that looked like glowing tea. The cup hovered in front of me, suspended by a soft blue field, and I stared at it as if it might suddenly apologize for existing. It didn't. Alien technology rarely does. The chamber was enormous, far larger than anything practical, which meant it was probably designed to impress or intimidate. The walls shimmered like liquid glass, flowing with faint symbols that rearranged themselves every few seconds, as if the building was quietly thinking about something very important. I tried not to stare at them too long. The last time I stared at alien symbols, I ended up volunteering for a mission I didn't understand. "Drink," one of them said. I looked at him, or her, or whatever the correct term was. They all had the same composed posture, the same elegant long ears curving slightly backward, the same unsettling calm. If humans had that level of composure, wars would probably take longer because everyone would politely wait their turn. "I'm not saying no," I said, raising my hand slightly. "I'm just asking what happens if I do." The alien blinked once, slowly. "You will experience mild stabilization." That sounds suspiciously like something that is not mild. "It is mild for us." "Right," I muttered. "That's exactly what I was afraid of." Still, I took the cup. It felt warm, not hot, and the glow dimmed slightly as I touched it, as if it recognized me. That alone was concerning. I drank it in one go, because hesitation only makes things worse, and immediately regretted every decision that had led me here. For a moment, nothing happened. Then everything happened. A strange calm spread through my body, like every nerve had decided to stop complaining at the same time. My thoughts sharpened, the noise in my head fading into something clearer, quieter. I blinked, looking around. "Okay," I said slowly. "I hate to admit it, but that's actually nice." No one reacted. Of course they didn't. If I had just discovered the best drink in the galaxy, I would at least smile a little. These people looked like smiling was an optional feature they had uninstalled centuries ago. The doors behind me opened without a sound, and that was when I felt it. The shift. Not in the room, in the air, in the way every alien presence subtly straightened, their attention moving in perfect unison toward the entrance. It wasn't fear. It wasn't even respect. It was something heavier, something deeper. Instinct. I turned slower than I probably should have, because part of me already knew that whatever was coming through that door would complicate my life. She entered without urgency, yet the entire space seemed to move around her. The light bent differently, softer, as if it had been waiting for her. She looked human at first glance. Too human. But then you noticed the details. The long ears, elegant and unmistakable. The stillness in her movements, like she was conserving something precious. The Queen. I didn't need anyone to say it. My brain filled in the blank immediately, followed by a very helpful thought. "You should probably not say anything stupid." Naturally, I said something stupid. "So, this is the part where I pretend I belong here, right?" No one laughed. The Queen stopped a few steps away from me, her gaze steady, focused. Not hostile, not welcoming, just precise, like she was measuring something. "You're the human," she said. It wasn't a question. "Last time I checked," I replied, "unless that drink did something unexpected." A pause, not long but enough. Then very faintly I thought I saw the corner of her mouth shift. Not quite a smile, but something close. If this was what passed for humor here, I was going to have to lower my expectations. "You were brought because your biological record is unusual," she continued. "That's one way to describe it," I said. "Most reports use words like concerning or please keep him away from sensitive equipment." Again, that almost smile, progress. But then I noticed something else. The stillness I had sensed before wasn't natural. It wasn't calm. It was fragile, like a system running just barely within acceptable limits. "You don't look well," I said before I could stop myself. The room froze. Every alien in the chamber turned slightly toward me, their expressions unchanged but their attention sharp. If I had just insulted their entire civilization, I'm not sure the reaction would have been more intense. I raised my hands again. "Not an insult, just observation." The queen didn't react immediately. She studied me, her eyes searching in a way that made me feel like I had just been scanned without permission. "You perceive correctly," she said at last. And just like that, the tension shifted again. Not gone, just redirected. "Great," I muttered. "So I'm not imagining things. That's comforting." "It should not be," she replied. "Yeah," I sighed. "I figured." There was a brief exchange between the others, silent, almost invisible, like signals passing through a network I couldn't see. Then one of them stepped forward. "It is time," they said. Time for what exactly they did not explain, but the way everyone looked at me made it very clear that whatever was about to happen, I was already part of it. I glanced at the queen one more time. Just out of curiosity, I said, "Is this going to be one of those moments where my life changes forever?" She held my gaze calm and unreadable. "Yes," I nodded slowly. "Of course it is." They didn't rush me, which somehow made everything worse. If someone is going to do something dangerous involving your blood, you want at least a little panic in the air, a sense of urgency. Instead, they moved with quiet precision, like they had already accepted the outcome and were simply going through the necessary steps. That is never comforting. The corridor we walked through curved gently, its walls alive with faint pulses of light that followed our movement like curious eyes. I tried not to think about that too much. The floor adjusted beneath my feet, subtly, almost politely, keeping my balance perfect even when I intentionally stepped awkwardly just to test it. "Okay," I said, glancing down. "That's actually impressive." No response. "Do you ever get bored of being this advanced?" Still nothing, I sighed. "I miss sarcasm." One of the guards tilted their head slightly as if trying to understand the concept. I decided not to explain. Some things are better left unknown. We reached a set of doors that didn't open immediately. Instead, they seemed to notice us. The surface shifted, rippling like water disturbed by a stone, and then parted silently. Beyond it, the air felt different, heavier, charged, like stepping into a storm that hadn't decided whether it wanted to exist yet. "This is the medical chamber?" I asked. "It is the core chamber," one of them replied. "That sounds significantly worse." They didn't disagree. Inside, the space was circular, vast and dominated by something at its center. At first, I thought it was a machine. Then I realized it was too organic for that. It pulsed slowly, like a heart, suspended within a lattice of crystalline structures that hummed with energy. Thin strands of light extended from it in all directions, connecting to consoles, walls, and an elevated platform where the queen now stood. I stopped walking. "Yeah," I said quietly. "That's definitely not normal." "The biocore," someone said. "Of course it is." I rubbed my face briefly. "And let me guess, that thing is the reason I'm here. It sustains her life." I looked at the queen. Up close, the subtle signs were impossible to ignore now. Her posture was perfect, her expression controlled, but there was a faint delay in her movements, like her body was waiting for instructions that arrived just a fraction too late. "You're serious," I said. "That thing is keeping her alive?" "It is failing," the scientist added. "Of course it is," I repeated. I took a few steps forward, drawn toward the core despite every instinct telling me to do the opposite. The light it emitted shifted as I approached, dimming slightly then brightening again in uneven pulses. "Is it supposed to react like that?" I asked. A pause. "No." "Fantastic." They guided me toward a platform opposite the queen. The distance between us wasn't large, but it felt significant. The air between us carried a tension I couldn't quite define. "Before we proceed," I said, raising a finger, "I'd just like to officially state that I do not understand what's happening." "That is acceptable," the scientist replied. "Good," I nodded, because I was worried I might be underprepared. They began connecting devices to me, thin, flexible strands that attached to my arms with a brief, cool sensation. No needles. That was nice. I appreciated the effort. "What exactly is the plan here?" I asked. "We will introduce your blood to the biocore." "Introduce," I repeated, "like a friendly meeting." "Yes, that sounds safe." "It is not." "Of course it isn't." I exhaled slowly, watching as the strands lit up one by one, syncing with the rhythm of the core. My pulse echoed through them, amplified, reflected back at me in a way that felt wrong, too loud, too present. Across from me, the queen remained still, her gaze fixed on me. "You may experience discomfort," she said. I smiled faintly. "That's been the theme of my life lately." There was that almost smile again, brief, subtle, but real. Then everything activated. The core flared with sudden intensity, its light expanding outward in a wave that passed through me like a shock. I gasped, not from pain, but from something stranger, a sensation of being recognized. The strands connecting me to the system pulsed rapidly, drawing something from me, feeding it into the core. The entire chamber responded, lights cascading across the walls, systems awakening in sequence. "Is it supposed to do that?" I asked, my voice tighter now. "No," someone answered. "Great," I muttered. "We're consistent." The pull increased, not painful, but undeniable. My heartbeat synced with the core, each pulse mirrored, amplified. It felt like standing too close to something alive and very interested in you. Then the queen moved, a sharp inhale, a shift in posture, small but unmistakable. "She's responding," one of them said, their voice barely controlled. I looked at her, my vision flickering slightly as the energy in the room intensified. "Hey," I called out, trying to sound casual despite everything. "Welcome back." Her eyes opened fully, and for a moment, the entire chamber fell silent. The core pulsed once, stronger than before. Then again, and again. It wasn't failing anymore. It was stabilizing. "No way," I whispered, but the pull didn't stop. If anything, it deepened. I said, glancing around. "I feel like we've moved past the introduction phase." No one answered, because they were all staring at the core, and the way it had changed. The light wasn't just reacting anymore. It was aligning. With me. "That's new," I said weakly. The queen stepped forward, her movements no longer delayed, no longer fragile. She looked whole. But her eyes were locked onto mine with a clarity that hadn't been there before. "You," she said, her voice steady, alive, "are not simply compatible." I swallowed. That's not a reassuring sentence. The core pulsed again, brighter this time, and I felt something shift deep within it, like a mechanism unlocking after a very long time. "You are recognized," she finished. I stared at her, then at the core, then back at her. "I'm going to need a lot more explanation," I said. No one moved, no one spoke, because whatever had just happened, it wasn't part of the plan. When the core finally stopped pulling, it didn't feel like relief. It felt like something had decided it had taken enough. For now, the strands detached from my arms one by one, retreating like they had somewhere else to be, and I stood there, trying to figure out if I was still entirely myself. "Okay," I said, flexing my fingers. "Quick question. If I suddenly start glowing, is that normal?" No one answered. They were all still staring at the core. I turned slowly to look at it again, and for the first time since I'd entered the chamber, I understood why. It wasn't just active, it was calm. The pulsing had stabilized into a steady rhythm, deep and controlled, like a heartbeat that knew exactly what it was doing. The chaotic flickers were gone. The erratic surges had disappeared. In their place was something deliberate, something aware. "Yeah," I muttered, "that's not unsettling at all." "You should sit," one of the scientists said. "I feel fine." "You should sit." "I'm noticing a pattern in your communication style," I replied, but I sat anyway, mostly because my legs had just informed me they were no longer interested in supporting philosophical debates. Across the chamber, the queen stepped down from her platform. No hesitation this time, no delay. Each movement was smooth, precise, alive in a way she hadn't been before. That should have been comforting. Instead, it made the silence heavier. She approached me slowly, her gaze never leaving mine, and I resisted the urge to look away. Not because I was brave, but because I had a feeling that if I broke eye contact, something important might happen without me. "You remain stable," she said. "High praise," I replied. "I've been working on that." "You do not understand what has occurred." "Correct," I said immediately, "but I'm very open to learning, preferably with diagrams and minimal life-threatening surprises." Again, that almost smile. It was becoming a problem. Before she could respond, one of the scientists stepped forward, holding a device that projected shifting layers of data into the air between us. Symbols, sequences, patterns. None of it meant anything to me, but the intensity in their posture made it clear it meant everything to them. The BioCore has entered a synchronized state, they said. Sounds impressive, I nodded. Also sounds like something that shouldn't happen. It has never happened. Of course it hasn't. They adjusted the projection, isolating a sequence that pulsed in time with the core. This pattern, they continued, is identical to your genetic signal. I leaned forward slightly, squinting at it like that would help. I'm going to pretend I understand that, I said, and then I'm going to ask the obvious question. Why? That is unclear. Fantastic. Love that for us. The Queen remained silent, but her attention had shifted, not away from me, but deeper, like she was listening to something beneath the surface of the conversation. The core is not merely accepting your blood, the scientist added. It is responding to it as a primary input. I blinked. Well, primary. Yes. As in, main. Yes. I leaned back slowly. So what you're telling me is, that giant ancient alien heart is now taking instructions from me. A pause. Yes. I stared at them. Then I looked at the core, then back at them. I would like to formally decline that responsibility. That is not possible. Of course it isn't. I rubbed my face again, trying to process the situation without panicking. It wasn't working. Okay, I said after a moment. Let's assume I believe you, hypothetically. What does that actually mean? The scientist hesitated. That is, under analysis. Right, because why would anything be simple? The Queen stepped closer then, close enough that I could see the subtle differences in her features, the faint variations that marked her as something not quite human. Her long ears shifted slightly as she tilted her head, studying me with that same precise focus. The core does not respond randomly, she said. It was designed. By who? I asked. Her gaze didn't waver. That is the question. I let out a quiet breath. Let me guess, I said. You don't have the answer. No? Great. So we're dealing with ancient technology, unknown creators, and now it's decided I'm important. Yes. I miss when my biggest problem was bad food. Something changed in her expression then. Not amusement, not exactly. Something softer. You are not afraid, she observed. I shrugged slightly. I am, I said. I'm just very good at pretending I'm not. It confuses people. Another brief pause, then, unexpectedly, she said, It is effective. I blinked. Was that a compliment? It was an observation. I'm counting it. Behind her, the scientists were still analyzing the data, their movements faster now, more urgent, but not panicked, focused, because whatever had happened, it was working, too well. The synchronization is increasing, one of them said. Is that good? I called out. Yes. Is it dangerous? Yes. I nodded. Consistency is important. The core pulsed again, steady and strong, and this time I felt it, not as a pull, but as a connection, subtle but undeniable, like something had reached out and decided to stay. I looked at it, then back at the Queen. I don't think this is temporary, I said. She didn't answer immediately because she already knew, and judging by the way everyone in the room had gone very, very quiet, so did they. They didn't disconnect me from the system immediately. That was the first sign something had changed. The second was the way no one gave orders anymore. Everyone moved, but no one seemed entirely sure who should be in charge of the moving. I stayed seated for a while, mostly because standing felt like making a statement, and I wasn't ready to make any statements that involved ancient alien cores and accidental responsibility. The strands had withdrawn, but the sensation remained, faint, like an echo that refused to leave. So, I said eventually, looking around, is there a protocol for this situation, or are we improvising? No one answered right away. One of the scientists adjusted a projection, another consulted a panel that seemed to resist being consulted, and the guards remained exactly where they were, which I suspected was their default setting. I'm going to assume that means improvising, I added. The data is inconsistent, one of them said at last. That's a polite way of saying you have no idea what's happening, right? A pause. Yes. Great, I nodded. I feel much better now. Across the chamber, the queen had not moved far. She stood near the core, not touching it, but close enough that the light reflected differently around her. It no longer looked like it was keeping her alive. It looked like it was listening. I pushed myself to my feet, testing my balance. Still stable. No sudden glowing. That was a win. I'd like to point out, I said as I walked a few steps closer, that I came here as a guest. You were brought, one of the guards corrected. Details, I waved it off. The important part is, I did not sign up for whatever this is. You are not being harmed. I stopped and looked at them. That's a very low bar. No reaction. I sighed. I really need at least one person here to understand sarcasm. You use it to reduce tension, the queen said behind me. I turned. That is correct, I said. It's either that or panic. Panic would be inefficient. Exactly, I pointed at her. See? You get it. She stepped closer, and this time the distance between us felt different. Not smaller, just less defined. Like the space itself had decided it wasn't as important as it used to be. The core's activity has stabilized, as she said, because of you. I'm going to keep reminding everyone that this was not intentional. Intent does not alter outcome. True, I admitted, but it makes me feel better. She regarded me for a moment, then shifted her attention to the core. The light pulsed gently, steady and controlled, and for a second I had the strange impression that it was aware of both of us at the same time. That's new, I said quietly. You feel it, she said. It wasn't a question. Yeah, I replied. I was hoping it was just my imagination. It is not. Of course it isn't. I rubbed the back of my neck, trying to ignore the faint rhythm that seemed to echo somewhere just beneath my awareness. So what does that mean? I asked. Because I'm starting to get the feeling this is more than just you helped fix the queen. The core is not a passive system, she said. It was designed to select. I blinked. Select what? She didn't answer immediately. That was not reassuring. Behind us, one of the scientists spoke again, their voice more urgent now. The synchronization threshold has been exceeded. I turned halfway. That sounds like a sentence that should come with warnings. It has no recorded precedent. Of course it doesn't. The projection shifted, expanding outward, layers of data reorganizing themselves into something that almost looked structured, not random anymore, not chaotic, directed. I took a step back without thinking. Okay, I said, raising a hand slightly. Just to clarify, none of you pressed anything, right? No. Good, just checking. The core pulsed again, brighter this time, and the light extended outward in thin, precise lines that traced across the chamber, touching the walls, the floor, the consoles, and then stopping at me. I froze. That seems targeted, I said. It is, the scientist replied. Excellent. The light didn't harm me. It didn't even feel threatening. If anything, it felt curious. I did not like that. I would like to formally request that it stop being curious, I said. It is responding to your presence. Yeah, I got that part. The queen stepped forward again, closer than before. Her expression unchanged, but her focus sharper. The core is recognizing a command pathway, she said. I stared at her. A what? A connection that allows interaction. I looked at the core, then at my hands, then back at her. You're telling me I can control that thing? She held my gaze. Yes. I let out a slow breath. No, I said. No, that's not happening. It already has. That was an accident. It does not differentiate. I laughed once, short and quiet. Of course it doesn't. The light pulsed again, softer now, and the lines faded slightly, but the connection didn't disappear. It lingered like a thread that had been tied and forgotten. I glanced around the chamber, at the scientists, the guards, the impossible structure at its center, then back at her. This is the part where everything gets more complicated, isn't it? She didn't hesitate. Yes. I nodded slowly. Yeah, I said. I figured. They moved me to another room shortly after the core decided I was apparently part of its daily routine. I say moved, but it felt more like I was escorted by very polite people who would absolutely not hesitate to restrain me if I tried anything creative. The room itself was calm, suspiciously calm. Soft light, smooth surfaces, No visible machinery trying to extract anything from me. I stood in the center for a moment, waiting for something dramatic to happen. Nothing did. Okay, I said slowly, turning in place. This is either a trap or the nicest room I've seen since I left Earth. It is a recovery chamber, one of the attendants replied. Recovery from what? A pause. That is still being determined. I nodded. Of course it is. I walked over to what looked like a seat, though calling it a seat felt like an insult to its design. It adjusted as I approached, reshaping itself slightly to match my posture before I even sat down. That's unsettlingly thoughtful, I muttered. I sat anyway. For a few minutes, nothing happened. No questions, no scans, no glowing liquids. Just quiet. The kind of quiet that makes your brain start filling the gaps with worst-case scenarios. So, I said finally, leaning back, am I allowed to leave, or is this one of those situations where I'm technically free, but also definitely not free? You are not confined, the attendant said. Great, I nodded. And if I try to walk out, you will be stopped. Right. So not confined, just discouraged. That is accurate. I smiled faintly. I appreciate the honesty. The door opened again, and this time I didn't need to look to know who it was. The room shifted slightly, subtle, almost imperceptible, but enough that I felt it, like the environment itself was adjusting to her presence. The queen stepped inside. No guards this time, no entourage, just her. That's new, I said, glancing around. Usually you bring at least 3 people who look like they don't trust me. They are unnecessary here. Comforting, I said. I think. She moved closer, stopping a few steps away. The lighting adjusted again, softening around her, though I was starting to suspect that wasn't the room doing it. You're stable, she said. You've mentioned that, I replied. I'm beginning to take it as a compliment. It is an observation. I'm still counting it. She studied me for a moment, and there was something different in her gaze now. Not just curiosity, not just analysis, recognition. I didn't like that nearly as much as I thought I would. Okay, I said, leaning forward slightly. We need to talk about that. That look, I gestured vaguely. The one that says, you are now part of something much bigger than yourself. I've seen it before, usually right before things get complicated. They are already complicated. Fair point. I exhaled, running a hand through my hair. So let's simplify, I said. What exactly happened back there? And please don't say, the core recognized you, because that's not an explanation. That's a mystery. She didn't respond immediately. Instead, she moved a little closer, her attention focused in a way that made it very clear she was choosing her words carefully. The core is not only a life-sustaining system, she said, it is a governing interface. I blinked. I'm sorry. What? It regulates the stability of our species. It maintains balance. It responds to those it was designed to respond to. And now it responds to me. Yes. I leaned back again, staring at the ceiling for a second. Okay, I said, let me process that. So not only did I accidentally fix the thing keeping you alive, I also connected myself to your entire civilization? Yes. I'm going to need a moment. I closed my eyes briefly, taking a slow breath. This is not how I imagined my week going, I muttered. When I opened them again, she was still watching me, her expression unchanged but her focus steady. You are not reacting as expected, she said. I raised an eyebrow. What was the expected reaction? Fear? Resistance? Denial? I'm doing all 3, or I said. I'm just being polite about it. That almost smile appeared again. It was definitely becoming a problem. But here's the thing, I continued, sitting up straighter. Even if I accept all of this, which I don't, not fully, you still haven't explained why. That remains unknown. Of course it does. She tilted her head slightly, her long ear catching the light in a way that made the movement more noticeable. There is more, she said. I groaned softly. There's always more. The core is not only stabilizing because of you, she continued. It is adapting. I paused. Define adapting. It is changing its structure to align with your genetic pattern. I stared at her. Then I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was either that or start pacing aggressively. So, I said, what you're telling me is, That ancient, incredibly important system is rewriting itself because of me. Yes. Without asking. Yes. Rude. She didn't respond to that, but I was fairly certain that if her species understood sarcasm even slightly, that would have been appreciated. I stood up slowly, the room adjusting again as I moved. And what happens if it finishes adapting? I asked. This time she hesitated. That was new. That outcome is uncertain, she said. Uncertain how? She met my gaze completely steady. It may fully integrate with you. I went very still. Integrate? Yes. As in, permanently? Yes. I let out a slow breath. Okay, I said quietly. That's not ideal. No. I looked at her, then away, then back again. And I'm guessing there's no off switch. No. Of course there isn't. The silence that followed wasn't heavy this time. It was thoughtful. Like both of us were standing at the edge of something neither of us fully understood. Then I shook my head slightly. You know, I said, back on Earth, the worst thing that could happen to me was getting assigned extra duty. She watched me. I think I preferred that. They didn't give me much time to process the possible permanent integration with ancient alien system part, which I felt was slightly inconsiderate. Instead, about 10 minutes after the Queen left, the door opened again, and this time it was not calm. It was organized, which is worse. 5 figures entered, same elegant posture, same long ears, but different presence. Less curiosity, more authority. The kind of people who don't ask questions unless they already know the answer. I stayed where I was, leaning slightly against the wall. Let me guess, I said. This is the part where I get evaluated. You will answer, one of them said. Ah, I nodded. So not evaluated. Interrogated with good posture. No reaction. I really needed to introduce humor training to this civilization. They arranged themselves in a semicircle around me, not close enough to feel aggressive, but not far enough to feel optional. We represent the council, the central one said. Of course you do, I replied. I was wondering when you'd show up. Big events always attract committees. You are connected to the core. Yes, I said. I've been informed, repeatedly. This connection is not acceptable. I blinked. I'm sorry, I didn't realize I had a choice in the matter. You must be separated. I laughed. I couldn't help it. That's great, I said. I fully support that idea. Please go ahead. Separate away. Silence. Then the one on the left spoke. It may result in your termination. I stopped laughing. Define termination. Your biological function would cease. Right, I nodded slowly. That's the definition I was afraid of. The room felt smaller suddenly. Okay, I said, raising a hand slightly. Let's all take a step back. You're telling me that your solution to this problem is to remove me from the system, which might kill me. Yes. And if you don't, the consequences are unknown. I sighed. You people really like that word. Uncertainty is unacceptable at this level. Yeah, well, so is dying, generally speaking. They didn't react to that either. I pushed myself off the wall, standing straighter now. Look, I said, I didn't ask for any of this. I didn't walk in here and say, hey, connect me to your ancient civilization core and see what happens. You brought me. You hooked me up. This is on you. The central figure stepped forward slightly. And now it must be corrected. Corrected, I repeated. You make it sound like a software bug. In a sense, it is. I stared at them. I'm not a bug. You are an anomaly. Still not better. Before I could say anything else, the door opened again. This time, I didn't need to turn to know who it was. The shift in the room was immediate. The council straightened, not out of fear, but something close to it. The Queen stepped in, her presence cutting through the tension like it had been waiting for her. This discussion ends, she said. No raised voice, no dramatic gesture, just certainty. The central figure inclined their head slightly. This is a matter of survival. It is already resolved, she replied. It is not. I glanced between them. Okay, I said quietly. I feel like I'm missing part of the conversation. No one acknowledged that. The Queen moved closer, positioning herself between me and the council without making it obvious. It was subtle, but it was there. He is not to be harmed, she said. He is a risk, one of them responded. He is the reason I live. Silence. That one landed. I shifted slightly behind her, not hiding exactly, but also not volunteering to stand in front of the very serious people discussing my possible termination. That's a strong argument, I added. I support that argument. Still nothing. I was starting to suspect they filtered me out entirely. The core has stabilized, she continued, for the first time in generations. Because of him, the central figure said. Yes. And that is precisely the issue. I frowned. Okay, I'm going to need you to explain how that's an issue, I said. No response. Right, I nodded. Still being ignored. The Queen's gaze didn't leave the council. The core has made a selection, she said. That word again. Selection. The room shifted again. Not physically, but in tone. The council didn't move, but something in their posture changed. Recognition, maybe, or concern. Selection requires validation, one of them said. It has been validated. By whom? She didn't hesitate. By the core itself. Silence. Real silence this time. The kind that doesn't need to be filled. I looked between them, trying to piece together what I was missing. I'm going to regret asking this, I said. But what exactly does selection mean? No one answered. Of course they didn't. I exhaled slowly. Great. Love the mystery. Very on brand for my life right now. The central figure finally looked at me directly. And for the first time, there was something in their expression that wasn't just control. It was calculation. You may not remain here indefinitely, they said. I wasn't planning to redecorate, I replied. This situation will be resolved. I nodded. Yeah, I said quietly. That's what I'm worried about. The Queen didn't move, didn't respond, but I could feel it again. That subtle connection, like a thread running between me and something much larger. Something that had already made its choice, and judging by the way the council was looking at me now, they knew it too. The council did not return immediately. That was either a good sign or a very bad one. I decided to interpret it as temporary relief, which is the optimistic version of they're planning something. I stood near the center of the chamber again, though this time I wasn't connected to anything, at least not visibly. The core pulsed steadily in the distance, its rhythm now so familiar that I could feel it even when I wasn't looking at it, which I had to admit was still deeply unsettling. So, I said, glancing at the Queen, hypothetically speaking, if I try to leave, what happens? She didn't answer immediately. That outcome is uncertain. Of course it is, I sighed. Everything is uncertain. I'm starting to think your entire civilization runs on that word. She almost smiled. Almost. I walked a few steps, testing the space, the feeling. The connection was still there. Quiet, constant, like something waiting. Not demanding, not forcing, just present. I can still feel it, I said. Yes. And it's not trying to pull anything anymore. No. That's progress, I nodded. I like progress. Progress usually means I survive longer. She studied me again. That same focused gaze, but there was something else now. Not just analysis, understanding. The core is no longer attempting to take, she said. It is maintaining balance. Balance with me, I replied. Yes. I let that sit for a moment. Okay, I said slowly. So let's review. I came here accidentally, got connected to your ancient system, almost got drained, didn't die, which I'm very proud of, and now I'm part of the system. Yes. So you see how that's a lot, right? It is significant. That's one word for it. The chamber shifted slightly, not physically, but in atmosphere. The core pulsed once, brighter than before, and something changed. Not outside, inside. I froze. Okay, I said quietly, that's new. You feel it? Yeah, I replied. And I don't think I like it. It is not harmful. That's not the part I'm worried about. I closed my eyes for a second, focusing on the sensation. It wasn't pressure. It wasn't pain. It was information, not in words, not in images. Just understanding, the kind that appears before you realize you're thinking. I opened my eyes again. I know what it does, I said. The Queen didn't react, but her attention sharpened. The core, I continued, it doesn't just keep things stable. It Connects everything. Systems, biology, energy. It keeps them aligned. Yes. And now I can feel that alignment, I said. You are part of it. I exhaled slowly. Right. There was a long pause. Not uncomfortable. Just final. So what happens now? I asked. She looked at me. Not as a subject, not as a problem, as something equal. That depends on your choice. I blinked. I have a choice? Yes. That's new. The connection does not bind you against your will. I stared at her for a moment. Wait, I said. So I can leave. If you choose to. And the core? It will remain stable. I glanced back at it. And you? I will live. That settled something I hadn't realized was still tense. Okay, I said softly. That's important. She stepped closer, just slightly. If you leave, the connection will fade. And if I don't, it will strengthen. I let out a quiet breath. Of course it will. I looked around the chamber at the impossible architecture, the technology, the civilization that had somehow become my problem. Then back at her. You know, I said, a few days ago, I was just trying to get through my assignments without anything exploding. She tilted her head slightly. And now? I smiled faintly. Now I'm deciding whether to stay connected to an ancient system that might reshape an entire species. That is accurate. Yeah, I nodded. No pressure. She didn't respond. Didn't need to. I turned back to the core one last time, feeling that steady rhythm, that quiet presence. Then I made a decision. I'm staying, I said. The words felt right. Not because they were easy, but because they weren't. The connection responded, not with force, not with light, but with something quieter, stability. The queen watched me, and this time, the almost smile became real. Not large, not dramatic, but unmistakable. Then you are no longer an anomaly, she said. I raised an eyebrow. Oh? Yes. What am I then? She held my gaze, calm and certain. Necessary. I laughed once, shaking my head. Yeah, I said. That's going to take some getting used to. The core pulsed again, steady and strong, and for the first time it didn't feel foreign. It felt shared. I looked at her, then back at the chamber, and finally allowed myself to relax just slightly. Well, I said, if I'm staying, I have one request. She waited. I'd like to understand at least half of what's going on. A brief pause, then, that is acceptable. I smiled. Good, I said. That's a solid start. And as the light of the core settled into its new rhythm, I realized something I hadn't expected. I wasn't trapped. I had chosen this. And somehow, that made all the difference.